Hello and welcome back to yet another video on our English channel. Today we're gonna talk about a very important topic for every collector, for every watch enthusiast, since that's a problem or let's say a challenge that we all face when we're trying to build up a collection. And the topic today is going to be, which watch should I get next? The question here is totally subjective. I know that everybody has a different taste and decides in a different way, so I'm gonna talk about all the criteria that you have to consider when you're thinking about getting a new watch. So one of the first things that I ask myself when I want to buy a new watch for my collection, my question is, do I need a dress watch, a sports watch? What occasion do I need the watch for? Sometimes you don't have an occasion, sometimes you just want to buy a new watch because you find it beautiful, but in many cases you will have to add a piece to your collection that complements the other ones, that completes the occasions that you can wear watches at. For example, when you're starting your collection, you don't start with the sports watch that you can wear when doing sports, when being outdoors. So you're gonna do that later in the course. At the beginning, you're gonna search for a everyday watch, a daily beater that should be durable, that should be robust, that should be very comfortable when wearing. So it's not gonna be a heavy watch. It's not gonna be the most expensive watch in the collection. At least that's what I've seen until this point. And the thing is that you have a few options. You can go for an everyday watch, you can go for a watch that is suitable for suits and formal wear, for example a dress watch. You will have to get a watch for, let's say, a little rougher environments, maybe for vacation as well. Some people also buy watches based on their color. For example, I have a lot of people that collect primarily Rolex, and they mostly after a certain point want to have a watch with a different dial, because most Rolexes, especially the sports models, have the black dial, so they are searching to get a white dial. So a lot of people, when they are buying the, for example, Explorer 2 with a polar dial, they will do that because they are bored of the black dials on every watch. But you can get also other colors. For example, I have a good client who, for example, only buys green watches. He does not wear any other color. I have clients that buy gold watches or steel watches only because they don't like the other alternative. So you have to decide first for what do you want to combine the watch for, what do you want to wear it for, and that's your base decision. And then you can get into the topic a little bit more specific. Now you decided, okay, you want this and that watch. Now you're gonna decide if you need any additional specs on the watch. For example, I have a good client that said to me that the weekly calendar is one of the Patek Philippe weekly calendar 5212A is one of the most useful watches, because when you're discussing appointments and dates in Germany, you often talk about calendar weeks, and no watch shows you the calendar week, the week we're in the year. And this is something that the weekly calendar can show you, so you don't have to open your phone, search in the internet for the current calendar week. This happens on your watch already. So that could be a very nice, let's say, occasion to get a watch, because you want to wear it when working, you need it in work, so you get it on your wrist. That gives you more convenience, gives you a lot of joy and happiness during the day, so why not? But the other things are, for example, waterproofness, a sapphire glass if you're moving in very rough environment. If it's an outdoor watch, I can't imagine why you would get a plexiglass watch, because the crystal is scratched very, very swiftly, so you only need to get in touch with something with the crystal and you already have scratches in it. You can replace the plexiglass crystals pretty easily, pretty cheap, but you don't want to do that every time you exit your house, so you probably want to get a sapphire crystal on your watch, or a watch with a sapphire crystal that's turned like this. And especially when you're thinking about getting an outdoor watch, you might want a waterproof watch, and then you have to decide, do I only do light swimming and the whirlpool, or do I also do sport swimming, diving? Because then you should consider getting a very, very waterproof watch like the Deep Sea or even the Sea Dweller, for example. If you want to just go swimming a little bit in vacation or in your pool at home or whatever, then you can do that with almost every Rolex. You can do that with almost every sports watch because most of them have at least 10 bar or 10 ATM. You can also go for another decision. For example, do you want a massive bracelet or do you prefer a rubber or leather strap? And that's a decision that's sometimes linked to the decision of what occasion you want to wear the watch for, because if you want to go swimming with the watch, you're not gonna decide for a leather strap. On the other hand, for a serious business meeting, the leather strap might be the best solution because it looks classic, it looks clean, it looks very, very elegant. So this might be the right decision. On the other hand, a rubber strap is not so good in that environment. If you take it to the beach, if you take it to the waterfront, then you will have the perfect watch because the rubber strap makes the watch lighter. It makes it a lot more wearable in summer because you're not sweating as much, especially if you're going for the oyster flex, for a Rolex on an oyster flex. And that is a big plus on when you're thinking about rubber straps. But if you're thinking about what does look the most valuable, what looks most complete, and like if you're thinking about the term watch, wristwatch, what do you think about? You're thinking about a massive bracelet. So for most watches, you will go probably for a bracelet. That's a fact because most watches are delivered on bracelets, on steel, gold, whatever. So that's a reason as well. The next thing that you have to decide when you're thinking about getting your next watch is of course the budget, because okay, I'm not gonna lie, maybe you should think about the budget a lot earlier in this process, but the budget can also help you filter out watches that are not very interesting or that are not in your price range. That's nothing to be ashamed of, in my opinion, because we all started at some point and we all started with a watch that was probably around 3,000 to 6,000 euros or less, and that's absolutely fine. I started my watch journey with a Tissot and it was not a PRX, it was a dress watch model that I bought for my graduation. So that's something you should never be ashamed of. The first watch that you get is something you should be proud of because it started your journey. But if you're thinking about budgets, you have to of course think about brands as well, because you're not gonna get a Rolex for less than 1,000 euros. If your budget is 1,000 euros, then you can get a beautiful watch. You can also get a mechanical and a handmade, like a really good watch. Thinking about Nomos at that point, thinking about Oris, thinking about Junghans. Those are brands where you can get watches for a lot less than 1,000 euros. If you want it cheaper, you can get watches for, let's say, the watches with real movements, with mechanical movements, start at 600 euros, around the 500 euro mark. So that could be your first budget. But if you're going higher, then some people don't mix it up. Even people with a lot of money like to set themselves budgets because they're thinking like this. Let's say, why should I get a dress watch for over 15,000 if my daily watch is under 5,000? So let's get a budget of 10,000 for the dress watch, and later I add more budget for the daily watch, and so on. So the budget is also a very big point here, because it's going to decide what brand you're getting, what material you're getting, if you're going for a leather strap or if you're going for the variations on the steel bracelet for some models. So the budget will be limiting your decisions. You will not have all options available the tighter the budget. So that's another thing that you have to consider. And then you have of course to consider also what collection you want to build up, because I have, as I said earlier, I have a client who only collects green watches. I have thousands of clients that only collect Patek Philippe or Rolex. Those are the two brands that a lot of people decide to limit the brand they're limiting their collection with, so they're only buying that brand. But I know other people that want to have most areas in their life covered up. For example, if you're going for shopping, then you wear a different watch that you wear when you bring your car to the dealership, and the same when you go grocery shopping or if you go out with your wife. That's something that a lot of people like to have a watch for every occasion. That's something that a lot of people do, and that's also how I would do it, because I would like to have a watch for everything that I'm doing in life, that I can change them. And that's a beautiful part here, because then you wear all watches that you have, which is, in my opinion, very nice, because sometimes you have a big collection of 30 watches, 40 watches, and you only wear 2 or 3, sometimes even just one, and that's not why we build up a collection. We build up a collection because we want to wear the watches mostly as well. But that can also be the case. Some people do not even like the watches they're buying on their wrist. They only like to see them in their shelf. They only want to see the watches. And some people, and that's something that I can understand pretty well. Some people decide to buy a watch based on their legacy, based on their historic relevance. For example, if you're building a collection, you might consider getting yourself a moon watch, which is a very popular watch. It is the Omega watch. So if you're thinking about getting a very important historic piece from every brand, you're going with the Speedmaster Professional moon watch. When thinking about Omega. When thinking about Rolex, on the other hand, you might want to get the Daytona because it's the most popular one, the most hyped watch that they have. If you go for Breitling, you might want to get the Navy Timer because it is the most value-keeping watch, of course. It keeps the value better than every other model that they have, but also it's the most historic one, the one that reaches back plenty decades back, that has a very big significance on chronograph and how they were designed later in the watch history. So some people are going for very historic, very important watches because in Germany we say you have to have this watch. You just have to have it in your collection. And that is something that I can also understand because me, for example, I'm not a big fan of the moon watch, wearing it myself, but I love to see it on other wrists and I love to get one in my hands. But the moment I put it on, I do not like it. So that's also the reason why I potentially could get one at some point, just to have it, because everybody needs a moon watch, or you can't call yourself a collector, right? So that's it for today. There are of course other factors that influence your decision on which watch you should get next, but those are a few factors that you can consider. Maybe you're making a list, maybe you're thinking about pros and cons. So think about this video, give us a thumbs up, and if you like our videos and the style we're doing the videos at, give us also a follow on our Instagram, on our YouTube channel, and we will see you next time in a few weeks, I guess. So have a good one. Bye bye. Enjoy summer.